I don't know about you, but I spend way too much time sitting at a desk. Between editing YouTube videos and my regular day job, I spend way too much time sitting at this desk. So today I want to build a standing desk accessory that I can pull out, easily install, and work standing up, and then move it aside so I can go back to a regular sitting desk. Now there are a lot of similar designs available online for something similar to what I want to build, but I don't have any plans or measurements or anything like that available to me, so today we're kind of just gonna wing it and figure it out as we go. I mean, come on, how hard can this be, right? Alright, so the first thing I'm gonna do is kind of prototyping, figuring out the angles and the sizes of the slots and things like that, so let's get to it. At times like these, I'm really glad I hold on to various lumber scraps in my cart. I'll grab a few pieces of 3/4 inch plywood and start by cutting a slot on one piece and make a tongue on the other. And then we'll see what angle they sit at. I'll use my layout tools from Princess Auto to mark out a slot that's 1 inch wide. Why 1 inch? Honestly, it's just a guess based on some pictures I've seen, but it seems like a good place to start. I'll first use a 1 inch Forstner bit to drill out each end. I'll then use a jigsaw to remove the waste in the middle. If you're like me and you can't cut a straight line with a jigsaw to save your life, I like to use a speed square as a fence to guide the jigsaw. Once you've got the distance figured out, just clamp it down and you're good to go. Jigsaws don't really cut clean lines, so I stayed inside the lines at this point, and I'll finish removing the waste with a router. To do this, I'll install temporary fences right on the lines that I drew earlier so I can use a straight bit with a bearing that'll ride along the fence. Since this is just a test piece, I can use a nailer to secure them, but later I'll be using some double-sided tape. Alright, because the bearing is on the top of my bit, or I guess the bottom if you look at it like this, I'm going to have to flip my workpiece over so that the fence is on the bottom and that bearing could ride along the fence. So I'll have it propped up here on some bench cookies, flip it over, I'll clamp that down, and we're ready to go. As for the mating piece, I'm just eyeballing a very rudimentary tongue that will fit into the groove that I'll cut out on my bandsaw, or you could use a jigsaw too. Alright, so I've got my test pieces cut out and I've rounded over all the edges like I will have in the final product, just in case that makes any difference. So I'm going to do a test and see by inserting this, what angle does this shelf end up being level at. So just to have an idea if I've got it right or not, I'm just going to put that in there, slap a level up here, and then use my little protractor here and start to slowly lean back until I reach level. Oh, went a little too far there. Just lean back slow, and that looks just about level. So that gives me an angle of 70 degrees on the back side here. Now I don't know, that could be not bad. I'm afraid, I think it might need to lean back a little more than that. So what I'm going to do is try to add a little V-notch right across the bottom here and see if that helps the angle lean back a little bit more. So let's try it out. Alright, so I've got my V-notch made here, and I actually did a couple different tests for placement, and it really has to be completely on the tongue for it to work. If you have it kind of borderline here in the crack here, it won't work. So I'm going to try the one that I made that was completely on the tongue and see what kind of angle we get. Alright, already I can see that it kind of already has a bite to it, so it looks much more solid, which I like. And if we put our level on, let's see what kind of angle we're getting until it's level. That looks about level. And we're getting an angle of about 65 degrees. So I think we gained a 5-degree inclination on the back, which I think should be, looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold off on the V-notch for now. I'm just gonna build the stand, see what the inclination turns out to be, if it feels comfortable, and if we need to add the notches, then we'll do that. I'll first rough cut each of the parts so they're easier to work with, and then start shaping them one by one. There are 4 parts to this standing desk: a base, a vertical back, and 2 adjustable shelves. The base will have a trapezoid shape. I'll also add a curve at the bottom, which is really more for aesthetics than anything else. The vertical piece will also have a trapezoid shape, but will be outfitted with 14 slots, all 1 inch wide and spaced 1 inch apart. To trace the slots, I made a template using the exact same method as I showed before. Now I can just position it on the layout lines and, after making sure it's perfectly straight, simply trace it out. Then move on to the next one and repeat. Every once in a while, I checked that the lines were perpendicular to the edges, and with everything looking good, I carried on my merry little way. The bottom slot will be for the base and needs to be a bit wider. I can still use the same template, but just be a little more creative with its application. I'll use my track saw to cut the trapezoid back and base. As for the curve on the bottom, I'll use my bandsaw. Now I've said this before, my bandsaw cutting skills aren't great, so trying to cut 2 identical curves is wishful thinking at this point. Instead, I'll use some scrap ply to cut out a template. If I mess it up, I'll just make another one until I'm happy with the curve. I can then use that template to transfer the curve onto my workpieces and have them both be identical in the end. First, I'll use some double-sided tape to stick down the template. I'm going to use a straight bit with a bearing. Now, the bearing is on the bottom, so I'll make sure that the template is also on the bottom too. Okay, so here you'll see that I made a mistake. I tried to shave off all the material in one pass, which caused some burning. Instead, I'll keep the router moving using shallow passes and keep going until the bearing bottoms out, which will give me much cleaner results and ultimately make the bit last longer. Okay, so I'll put the base and the back aside for now and work on the 2 adjustable shelves. These parts are easy, really. Just need to cut out a tongue that I'll do using both my bandsaw and my jigsaw. Alright, with all my parts cut and laid out, it's time to start working on the vertical backer board and start cutting out all of these different slots here. To do this, I'm going to do just like before. I'm going to use a drill to drill out the corners and then use a jigsaw to remove the waste in between. Now I have a lot of slots to cut, so to do it and make it easier, I could use something like this, which is a handheld drill press. You can bring it right on top of your workpiece and just use it in place. But since I have so many slots to cut out, I'm going to use my actual drill press, which has a lot more power and should make this a lot faster. I was using a 3/4 inch Forstner bit, but it was leaving too much waste, so here I'm switching to a 7/8 bit. Unlike before, I want to make sure I'm staying inside my layout lines and finish cutting the shape using my template and a router. This will be the best way to make sure that each slot is 100% accurate. Now, people always ask me how I can work with my drill press up against a wall like this. But the solution is quite simple. I can just turn my workpiece and get the clearance I need. Once all the holes are drilled, just like before, I'll use my jigsaw to remove all the waste, making sure to stay inside the lines. I can now use some double-sided tape to secure the template to the workpiece and make sure it lines up perfectly with the markings. I could use a handheld router like before, but since I have 14 slots to make, I'm going to use my router table. going round and round, moving the piece in a counterclockwise direction, taking shallow passes until the slot is fully shaped. Again, you don't want to press hard here and try to do it all in one pass. You'll get burn marks and may even knock off the template. Trust me, I've made that mistake. Last but not least, I'll round all the corners using the same bit with this radius jig. I'll leave a link to this tool below, or you could simply use a sander instead. Okay, we're getting close. All the parts are cut, but as you can see, they're looking a little rough. So I'll use a roundover bit on all the edges to give it a smoother feel and a more polished look overall. After all these years, I still have to remind myself to go counterclockwise around outside edges, but go clockwise on inner edges like these slots. Alright, at this point I think it's about time we try it out and see how it works. Not bad. Sort of. So of course, the shelves don't sit level. Not even close. I guess I was hoping by some sort of magic that I would just build it and everything would work perfectly and everything would be level. Of course not. So I guess at this point I have two options. The first option is I could somehow shim up the back kickstand here until the shelves are level. That would be an easy option. But if I do that, I'm afraid that my laptop is going to be really close to my face when I'm working at this thing. So instead, I think I'm going to try the V-notches we talked about in the tongues here and see how that works out. But first, there's something else I think I need to address, and that's to add a sort of V-notch to the bottom support. As it sits now, it just slides in, and basically, it's kind of hard to know that you'll get it exactly the same spot every time, that the angle will be different, because depending how far you slide it in, it kind of changes the angle. So I think we're going to start by adding a V-notch on this bottom piece here to make sure that it sits at exactly the same place every single time. The notch definitely gives me a reference point where I can sit the base, so I'm liking it already. Here I'm adding a V-notch to the tongue of one of the adjustable shelves. I like that the shelves just kind of click into place now, but I want them to sit close to horizontal and we're not quite there yet. So I'll make another pass to deepen the groove. Okay, that's about as deep as I can make the grooves, but it's still not level. So I think at this point I have no choice but to prop up the back so it won't lean back so much. Getting this angle just right is going to be tricky, so I'll take a bit of a shortcut and add some leveling feet. That way I can just dial in the angle as needed. This is probably the first time I develop a prototype of a build. I usually design every little detail before I start on a project, so this process was uncharted territory for me. It's not perfect, but in the end I made it work, which is a really great feeling. I'll do my best to leave as many details about the measurements and the build details on my website, so be sure to find that link in the description down below. I'll also include links to all the tools I used in case you saw something you liked. Hey, I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, thanks for watching. See you soon.